Forgotten battles that changed history. Imagine a world where everything you learned about history was just a small piece of a much bigger, wilder puzzle. What if some of the most important moments, the ones that truly shaped our lives today, were lost in old books, forgotten in time? Today, we dig deep into one such forgotten war, a battle so fierce, so strange, that it changed everything, but almost nobody remembers it. Get ready, because the true story is about to unfold. Our journey begins not with kings or grand armies, but with a simple farmer named Ilara. She lived in a land called the Whispering Valley, a place nestled between tall, jagged mountains and a vast, shimmering lake. Her days were spent under the warm sun, her hands in the rich, dark soil, planting seeds that would feed her village. The air always smelled of pine and fresh earth, and the only sounds were birds singing and the gentle rustle of leaves. Ilara was small, but strong. Her hair was the color of wheat, and her eyes were bright green, always watching, always curious. She loved her quiet life, the rhythm of the seasons, and the comforting predictability of her world. Every morning, she would wake with the first rays of dawn, eat a simple breakfast of bread and berries, and head out to her field. One unusually hot summer, something felt wrong. The air was heavy, still, as if holding its breath. The usual forest creatures were quiet. The birds stopped singing their morning songs. Ilara felt a strange tingle on her skin, a feeling like electricity right before a big storm. She tried to tell herself it was just the heat, but a shiver ran down her spine. Her village, nestled by the winding river, was usually full of laughter and chatter. But now, even the children played more quietly. The elders sat by their fires, their faces wrinkled with worry, whispering old stories that spoke of shadows and distant thunder. Ilara overheard bits and pieces, the great silence, the forgotten war, when the mountains cried. She didn't fully understand, but the words sent a chill through her heart. One evening, as the sun dipped below the mountains, painting the sky in fiery oranges and deep purples, Ilara's grandmother, Lyra, called her. Lyra was the oldest person in the village, her eyes like deep pools of ancient knowledge. She sat by the hearth, the firelight dancing on her wise face. "Ilara," she began, her voice soft like a lullaby, "the old stories are waking up." Lyra explained that long, long ago, even before her own grandparents were born, a terrible shadow fell over their land. It wasn't an army of men, not like the tales of brave knights. No, this was something different, something from the deep earth. She spoke of creatures that moved like nightmares, their skin like stone, their eyes like burning coals. They came from deep below, bringing a strange, silent cold. These creatures, Lyra called them the grumblers, didn't want land or gold. They wanted silence. They wanted to take away all sound, all laughter, all music, leaving only a cold, empty quiet. They had once swept across the world, turning vibrant lands into silent, dusty wastes. And our world today, Lyra whispered, was saved by a battle so strange, so impossible, that it was erased from memory. Ilara listened, wide-eyed. It sounded like a scary bedtime story, but her grandmother's voice held a serious, heavy truth. "Why don't we know about this, Grandma?" she asked, her voice a tiny whisper. Lyra sighed, a long, weary sound. "Because the cost was too great. To win, our ancestors had to make a choice that made everyone forget. But the memory, Ilara, lives in the land. And sometimes, the land remembers, and it sends warnings." The strange quiet in the valley grew stronger each day. Animals moved away. The river's usual babble became a murmur. Ilara even noticed that her own footsteps seemed softer on the earth. She started to see things, too. Flickers of movement in the corner of her eye, shadows that seemed to hold still when she looked directly at them. One morning, while checking her traps in the forest, she found a strange, small stone. It was smooth and dark, but it hummed with a tiny, silent vibration when she held it. It felt cold, almost too cold. She tucked it into her pocket, feeling a strange pull towards it. It was like a tiny piece of the mystery her grandmother had spoken about. The next night, the air grew even colder, even though it was still summer. A strange mist began to creep down from the mountains, not like the usual morning fog, but thick and heavy, smelling of damp earth and something metallic. The mist seemed to eat sound. The crackling fire in the village square sounded muffled, far away. Then, from the heart of the mist, came the first sound. It wasn't a roar or a scream. It was a low, rumbling groan, deep enough to shake the very ground. The grumblers were back. Panic erupted. Villagers cried out, grabbing their children, their faces pale with terror. Ilara saw her grandmother standing tall, her eyes fixed on the creeping mist. "It begins," Lyra said, her voice steady despite the fear. The battle of whispering echoes. Out of the mist, they emerged, not in a rush, but slowly, deliberately. They were huge, easily twice the size of a man. Their bodies were like rough, jagged rocks, dark and gray, with sharp edges. Their arms were thick, ending in blunt, powerful hands. And their eyes, oh, their eyes. They glowed with a dull, orange light, like embers in a dying fire, and they held no kindness, no thought, only a terrible, ancient hunger for silence. These were the grumblers. Their movement was silent, save for that deep, earth-shaking rumble that came from somewhere inside them, a sound that seemed to vibrate in your very bones. They moved towards the village, slowly but surely, like mountains walking. The villagers had no army. They were farmers, weavers, woodcutters. Their tools were for life, not for war. But as the grumblers drew closer, a strange determination settled on their faces. They remembered the stories, even if the details were lost. They knew what was at stake. Lyra, the old woman, stepped forward, holding a gnarled staff. "They fear sound," she cried, her voice echoing strangely in the quiet air. "They hunger for silence. We must make noise." And so, the desperate, forgotten battle began. It wasn't with swords and shields. It was with everything they had. Children began to beat on pots and pans with spoons, making a clanging racket. Women started singing, their voices trembling but growing stronger. Men grabbed sticks and drums, anything that could make a loud sound. The grumblers, at first, seemed confused. The strange, clanging, singing sounds hit them like invisible waves. Their glowing eyes flickered. Some of them paused, their rumbling bodies shaking slightly. But they kept coming. Ilara, clutching the strange, humming stone in her hand, saw her grandmother leading the charge, not with weapons, but with a song. It was an ancient, powerful melody, full of the history of their valley, the laughter of generations, the whispers of the wind. Lyra's voice, surprisingly strong, soared above the growing cacophony of the village. The strange stone in Ilara's hand began to hum louder, vibrating against her palm. It grew warm, then hot. As the villagers made more noise, as the music and banging filled the air, the stone began to pulse with a faint, blue light. Ilara looked at it, then at the grumblers. The creatures seemed to recoil slightly when the blue light pulsed. "The stones!" Lyra suddenly shouted, pointing to other villagers. "Find the echo stones, the ones that hum." Suddenly, other people started to remember. They had seen these stones before, felt their strange vibrations. Some had used them as doorstops, others as weight. Now, they hurried to find them, and as each stone was found and held, it began to glow, adding to the strange, blue light. It turned out, these were the echo stones, ancient relics used in the first forgotten battle. They didn't just glow, they amplified sound. When someone sang near an echo stone, the sound didn't just travel normally. It became bigger, stronger, more focused, like a beam of pure noise. Ilara realized that the villagers weren't just making noise. They were turning their sounds into weapons. The children's clanging pots became sharp, piercing attack. The women's singing became a warm, protective wall of sound. The men's drumming became a steady, pounding rhythm that vibrated through the very ground. The grumblers hated it. They recoiled. Their stony skin seemed to crack slightly at the force of the amplified sounds. Their glowing eyes dimmed. The deep rumble inside them grew erratic, like a broken machine. They slowed, they staggered. Some even turned, trying to retreat back into the mist. But there were so many of them. More kept emerging from the creeping mist, a never-ending wave of silence-hungry monsters. The villagers were getting tired. Their voices grew hoarse, their arms ached from banging. Fear started to creep back in, chilling their resolve. Ilara looked at her grandmother, whose face was streaked with sweat but still held that fierce determination. She saw the villagers, their faces strained, but still making noise. She knew they couldn't give up. Holding her echo stone high, Ilara remembered her grandmother's words about the land remembering. The valley itself, the mountains, the lake, they all held echoes of the first battle. What if they could wake up the land itself? She closed her eyes for a moment, focusing on the humming stone, on the connection she felt to the earth beneath her bare feet. She thought of the rich soil she tilled, the strong trees, the clear river. She remembered the peaceful sounds of her home, the sounds the grumblers wanted to steal. Then, she started to sing. It wasn't a song she knew, not from the village. It was a song that seemed to rise from deep within her, a melody of the earth itself. It was soft at first, but with the echo stone, it grew, taking on a rich, resonant quality. As Ilara sang, the blue light from her stone grew brighter, stretching out like a beam. And then, an amazing thing happened. The ground itself began to hum. Not just vibrate, but to hum with a low, deep resonance that joined Ilara's song. The ancient trees in the forest around them began to whisper, not with wind, but with a deep, resonant murmur. The river water began to ripple in time with her melody. It was as if the land itself was waking up, joining the fight. The mountains, silent witnesses for centuries, began to send down echoes of Ilara's song, multiplying its power. The grumblers stopped dead. The sound was too much for them. It wasn't just loud, it was fundamental. It was the sound of existence, the very hum of the world. They shuddered. Their stony bodies began to crack, not just small lines, but deep, spiderweb cracks that spread across their forms. Their glowing eyes dimmed to tiny sparks, then winked out completely. With a final, terrible, silent shudder, the first grumbler crumbled. It didn't fall apart with a crash, but dissolved into fine dust, like old, dry earth. Then another, and another. The mist, which had been thick and heavy, began to swirl, picking up the dust, creating a strange, dark cloud. The villagers watched in awe and horror as the ancient enemies turned to dust, carried away by the wind. The silence that followed was not the heavy, dead silence of the grumblers, but a vast, empty quiet, full of the lingering echoes of the battle. The mist slowly lifted, revealing the dawn. The sun rose, painting the sky in soft pinks and golds. But the valley was changed. Where the grumblers had stood, there were only faint, dark stains on the ground, and a strange, almost musical hum still lingered in the air. Ilara stood, exhausted, her voice hoarse, but a profound sense of relief washed over her. The echo stone in her hand was now cool and dark again, just a simple stone. She looked at her grandmother, who smiled, a deep, knowing smile. "We did it, Grandma," Ilara whispered, tears pricking her eyes. "Yes, Ilara," Lyra said, her voice filled with pride. "You reminded the land of its song. You reminded everyone of the echo." But the battle wasn't truly over. As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows, Lyra gathered the villagers. "The grumblers are gone for now," she said, her voice serious. "But the memory of their coming, and the terrible power of the echo stones, is too dangerous. This knowledge cannot be allowed to spread, or it will draw them back, or worse, be used by others for ill." The villagers, remembering the fear, the horror, and the immense effort it took, agreed. This battle, they decided, would be forgotten. The echo stones would be gathered and hidden, deep within the earth, their humming power quieted. The story would become a whisper, then a legend, then nothing but a strange feeling that sometimes lingered in the valley. They agreed to wipe the detailed memory, to let the specifics fade like mist. It was a sacrifice, a heavy price for peace. The true history of the Battle of Whispering Echoes would be stored not in books, but in the heart of the valley itself, waiting for another time it might be needed. Ilara watched as the villagers, with heavy hearts, began their task. They buried the glowing stones, not in a single pile, but scattered them far and wide, deep below the soil, where only the earth could feel their silent hum. As they worked, a strange forgetfulness began to settle over them. The sharp details of the grumblers' forms, the exact sounds of the battle, the precise words spoken, they started to blur, to become hazy, like a dream fading after waking. Ilara felt it too, a gentle slipping away of the crisp edges of memory. She tried to hold on to the image of the grumblers' glowing eyes, but it felt like trying to grasp smoke. She remembered the feeling of terror, the surge of power when she sang, but the how and why began to melt away. It was a strange, almost peaceful process, like a heavy burden slowly being lifted. Soon, the only thing that remained was a shared sense of profound relief, a quiet understanding that something terrible had been averted. The valley returned to its peaceful rhythm, but with a subtle difference. The birds sang a little louder, the river seemed to babble with more joy, and the wind carried a faint, almost musical whisper through the trees. It was as if the land itself was celebrating its victory, even if its human inhabitants couldn't quite remember why. Ilara went back to her fields, her hands once again in the warm earth. The sun felt warmer, the soil more alive. She still had her green eyes, full of curiosity, but now they also held a deep, unexplainable wisdom. She couldn't recall the exact moment of the grumblers' crumbling, or the full power of her song, but she remembered the feeling of connection to the earth, the incredible power of sound. Sometimes, when she tilled the soil, she would hum a strange, wordless tune. It wasn't a village song, but a melody that felt ancient and powerful, resonating deep within her. The plants seemed to grow stronger where she hummed, and the earth felt particularly vibrant beneath her feet. She didn't know why she did it, but it felt right, like tending to an old, familiar friend. Life in the Whispering Valley continued. Generations passed. The story of the grumblers became a vague old tale, something a grandparent might mention about a time when the world was very quiet. The echo stones were completely forgotten, hidden deep within the earth, their silent hum a secret kept by the planet itself. But the impact of that forgotten battle, the Battle of Whispering Echoes, was immense. The grumblers, if they had one, would have turned the entire world into a silent, dead place. All music, all laughter, all communication would have ceased. Humanity might have withered away in that terrible quiet because of Alara and the villagers' sacrifice. Because they chose to forget the painful details for peace, the world could continue to sing. Children could laugh, lovers could whisper, and music could fill the air. Every song, every word spoken, every joyous sound in our world today is, in a way, an echo of that forgotten battle. It's a powerful reminder that history isn't just about what we remember in books or monuments. Sometimes, the most important battles are the ones fought in desperation, remembered only by the land itself, and whose true impact shapes our entire world in ways we can't even imagine. And sometimes, the greatest heroes are those who choose to be forgotten, so that others may live on, vibrantly, loudly, in a world full of sound. The quiet hum beneath our feet, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of a bird, these are the gentle whispers of a truly ancient victory, waiting for us to listen closely.